claim some of those as we listen today to what God is saying. Some of us have a wonderful closeness with our mother. Maybe you talk every day and share everything. Some of us have lost a mother, a grandmother, a mentor, a mother figure, and we miss them, thinking about them often. Others of us have a strained relationship with a mom due to personality clashes or maybe something more serious like neglect and abuse. I was talking with my dad yesterday about this, and he said that one of the things you don't think of, but he had a painful relationship with his mother who was in and out of his life. But he chose to stay in contact, and he always struggled with what card to get for Mother's Day. He wanted to show appreciation for her, but some of the flowery, wonderful, perfect, hallmark words in those cards didn't quite fit. And so he always had to look for one that felt right. And there are some of us who wrestle with our role as a mother or grandmother. Am I doing it right? Am I traumatizing my child? Am I finding the right balance between motherhood and career or whatever else? I had a friend who used to joke that her goal was to raise children independent enough to pay for their own counseling. I think that was a good goal. And then there are those of us who have longed to be a mother, to get pregnant and give birth, but are unable to do so. And it's devastating. Some of us have had miscarriages and experienced that profound loss. And yet others of us choose not to become mothers. Maybe we choose to give our love and wisdom in other ways. Maybe we don't feel prepared to raise a child, or feel we don't have the support system. And though we don't like to name this in religious circles, it's possible that some of us have terminated a pregnancy for reasons that are tragic and private. Yet others of us have formed families in different ways. We have a family of choice. We have women who are mother figures to us. We have children that we nurture. And families that were formed by adoption or marrying a partner who had children of their own. I hope that it's been clear today, and as you've become a part of our community, that we welcome all of those family expressions and all the full range of feelings that you might bring to a day like today. We want to celebrate you and help care for you as you care for others. Whew, okay. That's a lot. But with all this potential baggage, why do we talk about it at all? Why not just pretend like it's any other Sunday? Because motherhood matters. It matters a lot. For better or worse, all the good, true, beautiful, ugly, painful ways motherhood impacts all of us deeply and matters to the wider world. What we do in our homes ripples out into the world. And we talk about it also because when we read the stories of Scripture, we encounter many mamas who played important roles in the story of God and God's people. And we have the opportunity to read and reflect on those stories and learn from these women of courage. Today we're going to consider the story of a woman who became a nurturer of hope and a midwife of liberation for her people. Ashlyn has already pronounced her name, Jochebed, Moses' mother. And the story is found in Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. And so, Sarah, if you want to come. Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 through 10.
Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to the Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." God is still speaking. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, because I am who I am, I want to start with a brief history of Mother's Day. The first mention of Mother's Day goes all the way back in the United States, goes all the way back to 1870 by a woman named Julia Ward Howe. Does anyone happen to recognize that name? Pete.
She was a writer.
Yes, and she was especially known for one particular song. Do you know what that is?
I was thinking Battle Hymn.
That's exactly right. Battle Hymn of the Republic. She wrote the words for that. And in 1870, Howe made a Mother's Day declaration, which she called a Mother's Day of Peace, in which mothers would gather together and consider how they could use their voice and influence to promote peace. And in that declaration, she stated, "Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether our baptism be that of water or tears. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice." A powerful declaration. And mothers from about 20 cities around the country responded. But it didn't last very long. Kind of fizzled out. So in the early 1900s, a woman named Anna Jarvis began advocating for a national recognition of Mother's Day. As a child, she heard her mother pray in Sunday school that such a day would be created that recognized the contributions of mothers not only in the home, but out in among humanity. Her mother was very active in promoting peace and public health, especially in the troubled aftermath of the Civil War. She started they were called Mothers' Work Clubs, and even created a Mother's Friendship Day that brought together families after the war, the Civil War. And when Anna's mother died in 1905, she vowed to get a Mother's Day established as a national holiday. So she set out on this public speaking tour and letter writing campaign that took root and spread across the country. And in 1914, Congress declared it a national holiday. In 1917, President Wilson declared it a day of, quote, public expression of our love and reverence for all mothers. And the rest is history. Unfortunately, the commercialization of Mother's Day happened fairly quickly, much to the dismay of Anna Jarvis. No, sorry, just keep on that. Instead of her mother's vision of celebrating mothers for all their contributions, it became a weak and consumeristic gesture of thanks for the mother's contributions in the home. And she was not impressed. I love this. She wrote, "A printed card means nothing except that you are too lazy to write the woman who has done more for you than anyone in the world. And candy, you take a box to Mother and then eat most of it yourself. A pretty sentiment. Ouch." It honestly could have been written in 2025 instead of the 1940s. But Anna Jarvis was so upset that she tirelessly campaigned to restore Mother's Day to its intended purpose. And in years closer to her passing, she advocated that they do away with the holiday altogether. This little history of Mother's Day reflects in some ways the wider history of motherhood. Mothers do so much thankless, hidden work in nurturing and caring and managing a household, and at least once a year we try to throw out a little appreciation and gratitude their way for all the work they do. But the older history of Mother's Day also reminds us of the other parts of motherhood. That mothers are not only quiet caregivers, they are also public advocates for peace and healing and justice in the world. They know there's no way to completely separate caring for one's children and working for change in the world because it's all connected. Put another way, motherhood takes place not only in a household and family context, but also in a social and political context. Our mother from today's reading knows this. She's unnamed in the passage today, but we learn later her name is Jochebed. She lived faithfully in her context in an Israelite family, but she also had to navigate the social and political context living under the reign of a Pharaoh, an Egyptian king, who enslaved and oppressed her people. As a young Israelite mother living in Egypt, she became pregnant at a very inconvenient time. The Hebrew people were slaves in Egypt, but the Pharaoh began, as Ashlyn said earlier, began to fear them because they were multiplying, they were growing, they were having babies. And he was worried that their power would expand in numbers. So he declared that all Hebrew children should be killed at birth, and he commanded the midwives to enforce this law. But they refused. 2 specific midwives are named in Exodus chapter 1. Perhaps a mother and daughter pair. And I love they told the Pharaoh, "We tried, but the Hebrew women are too different. They are much more vigorous than Egyptian women. So by the time we got there, the children are already born and gone." Their resistance to the Pharaoh is considered the first act of civil disobedience recorded in history. So we'll stop here for a moment for this first insight into courage. And that is, there's the midwives there. Sometimes courage means not doing as you're told. Now some of you are like, yes, I've been waiting for the permission for that. There is a time for, as the Bible calls it, being subject to people and systems that are established for our well-being. We cooperate as much as possible with our families, our schools, our community, our government, for the sake of the common good. But the Bible and spiritual history also provide many examples of people who practice civil disobedience, who refuse to participate in violence and idolatry and oppression, who believed there are times when we have to choose to follow God in our conscience or the orders of the powers that be. So they prayed, they protested, they persisted. Quakers throughout our history have been sought to be a peaceable people. But we've also gotten into a lot of trouble. From the very beginning, Quaker peacemakers were also troublemakers, refusing to swear oaths, refusing to doff their hat to the powerful, refusing to fight wars, refusing to support slavery. I also know many modern-day Quakers who have been arrested for their non-cooperation with unjust systems. Now, there's a difference between practicing civil disobedience and just being stubborn and self-righteous. There's no value in troublemaking for troublemaking's sake. As Thomas Merton said, every prophet is a pain in the neck, but not every pain in the neck is a prophet. So we need to get into good trouble or necessary trouble, as civil rights leader John Lewis said. If we're going to get into trouble, we should do it for something, not just against something. Like the Hebrew midwives, we make that choice for the sake of life and love. To protect the vulnerable, promote family, nurture whatever new thing or new person God is bringing forth into the world. In one way or another, we are all midwives of life and love. The Sikh writer and activist Valerie Kaur writes about spiritual and social change, go to the next one, as a birth-giving process. She's famous for saying that though we feel darkness all around us, maybe that darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb. And what is being born at this time? How are we being born again? And she reminds us that the midwives remind mothers as they labor of two main tasks: breathe and push. Breathe and push. This process is there wherever change is happening, whether it's a family, a church, a community, a nation. We have to work inside the rhythms of breathe and push and listen to the midwife, listen to the Spirit, and discern when is the time to breathe, to let things be, to let people be, let things rest. And when is the time to push, to challenge, to call in and call out, to insist on moving forward? That's our constant discernment. Breathe and push. And then if you go back, the other thing that I found out recently is that you may be familiar with this slogan that has made its way around actually since the 1970s, and bumper stickers and signs and t-shirts. Well-behaved women seldom make history. It's used as permission to be a little subversive, get into a little good trouble, make a little history. And unless women defy gender roles, it suggests they won't make a real difference. But interestingly, the woman who actually coined this term had an entirely different meaning in mind. Her name is Laurel Thatcher Ulrich. She was a historian. And when she wrote a book by that name, Well-Behaved Women Seldom Make History, she actually wasn't so much calling for non-well-behaved women so much as pointing to the reality that when we do history, The only women that make it into the history books are the ones who act out. Her point was actually that sometimes the well-behaved or ordinary women also make a difference in the world. They still shape history. They still make an impact, but often we miss that. We neglect that, ignore that. I actually like both meanings of the slogan. We can support women, including mothers, who are out there speaking up and acting up for life and love. And we can celebrate women and mothers who are just seeking to be faithful in the ordinary activities of life, being a parent, being a spouse, doing meaningful work in your local community. It all matters to God, and we should value it all. Back to our story. After Pharaoh's first decree was not successful, he changed his strategy. Now he demanded that every male Hebrew child be thrown into the Nile as soon as they were born. In this context, Jochebed became pregnant, and she manages to give birth safely and looks at her baby and falls in love. The text says she saw that he was a fine boy. Of course he was. And she manages to keep him secret and keep him safe for 3 months, which is a miracle in and of itself. But she knows she can't keep him any longer, and she's certainly not going to throw him into the Nile to drown or be eaten by crocodiles. So she decides on the best alternative she can imagine under the circumstances, which really is all any of us can ever do, is find the best alternative we can imagine under the circumstances. And for her, that meant making him a little papyrus basket and coating it with tar and pitch. The Hebrew word for this basket is a little hard to translate because it's only ever used in one other story in the Hebrew Bible, what we call the Old Testament. Genesis chapter 6. Does anybody know what Genesis chapter 6 talks about? That's okay. It's about a guy named Noah, and when he was called to build an ark. So Moses' mother is building him a little tiny ark for the same purpose, to protect life and create something that can build a better future. Like any good mama, she was doing everything she possibly could to give her baby the best shot at a possible future. But also, like every good mama, she had to go through the painful process of loving someone, nurturing and protecting them, and then letting them go. Releasing them to life, to God, to the future, and hoping and praying for the best. Whether it happens when the child is a baby, or whether it happens when a child goes off to college, or gets married, or joins the military, whatever it may be, every mother has to learn to let go. And that takes courage. All the instincts from innumerable generations of mothers is inside, wanting to hold that child tight and never let go. But if they're to flourish, and if new generations are to rise up and God's purposes go forward, she has to summon the courage to let the baby go. And of course, though the mother's experience is unique, all of us have to undergo that process of learning to love and let go. Or to borrow the language from AA, let go and let God. So this is the second point, that courage means learning to love and let go. Learning to love and let go. There's a poem from Mary Oliver who writes about this truth. in her poem, The Blackwater Woods. And I think there's a slide for this, yeah. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And when the time comes, to let it go. To let it go. We love what is mortal, what's fragile, what's impermanent. We hold it, and when the time comes, we let it go. So we ask ourselves, what is God inviting you or us to let go of? A child, a church, a relationship, an expectation, a job, an identity. Ultimately, we are almost always letting go of some manifestation of control. How we long to be in control. And self-control is a virtue. But we're not called to control anyone. And even if we were, it's a counterproductive strategy. When we hold someone too close, they pull away. When we try to control someone's behavior, they rebel. When we try to control life's circumstances, there's always some shock or surprise that reminds us there's a much bigger world than we could possibly control. So we learn to love and let go. To love by letting go. And there's a beautiful providential twist in this story. Moses' mother was in the Nile, Pharaoh's daughter enters the story. After the baby is let go, the elder sister is asked to follow the basket and see what happens. She's a good older sister. And then Pharaoh's daughter was there bathing in the Nile, and she notices the basket. And she looks at the baby, she opens it up, looks at the baby starts crying, and she feels sorry for the little one. So she decides the boy needs some care. And then out pops Moses' older sister, Miriam, I believe, and says, maybe this Hebrew baby needs a Hebrew woman to nurse him. Now, hiring Hebrew mothers to nurse babies was a common practice at the time. Good idea, says the princess. Do you have anyone in mind? And she says, as a matter of fact, I do. So Jochebed gets to continue to care for her baby, and she gets paid for it, which is a pretty sweet deal. Eventually, she did have to let him go again, though, for him to become a prince of Egypt, as the Disney, is that a Disney picture? DreamWorks movie. Thank you. And he had a whole other purpose, and that's a whole other sermon series. But she had to let him go again. Sometimes when we let someone go, they come back to us. When we release them to live their own lives, when we release them to God's care, sometimes they come back to us. Not always, but sometimes. And sometimes when we let go of a hope or a dream we have, it comes back to us in due time. Not always, but sometimes. There's a big circle of providence. You never know. Maybe it or they will come back, or maybe something or someone better will surprise us. But first, we have to let go. Before we close, I want to recognize a third example here of courage in this story. So we learn the value of civil disobedience from the midwives. We learn the need to love and let go from Jochebed. But let's not forget the role here of Pharaoh's daughter. She wasn't a member of the people of Israel. She wasn't one of them. But we see God's light in her compassion she showed for the baby Moses. It says that she heard the baby's weeping and felt sorry or had compassion for him. And as a woman in a position of power and privilege, she could very easily have just ignored the baby. She knew her father's decree. She could have just let the basket float on by. Good luck, little dude. But she didn't. She listened to her heart. She felt compassion, and she let that move her to act. I don't know whether or not she had biological children of her own, but her action was a courageous act of motherhood. And in times when people are polarized and afraid and hard-heartedness rules the day, it's a powerful and prophetic posture to keep our hearts open. It's brave to stay tender. Compassion is courageous. So this is the third point. Courage means keeping your heart tender. Keeping your heart tender. The spiritual writer Henry Nouwen reminds us, the word courage comes from koar, which means heart. To have courage is to listen to our heart, to speak from our heart, to act from our heart. Our heart, which is the center of our being, is the seat of courage. The heart is the seat of courage. In our time, I think this is more important than ever. There are so many forces in our culture pulling us apart, hardening our hearts, keeping our lives from touching those who are different from us. So we need to take courage by keeping our hearts tender. And if you feel your heart hardening, maybe this is something to bring to God. I love the passage God tells the people in Ezekiel, through the prophet Ezekiel, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. So maybe that's a matter of prayer or practice for you. God, transform my heart of stone into a tender heart. Okay, so what is the call to courage for you, for us as a congregation? As we enter a time of waiting worship, of listening to that still small voice within, of being open to sharing what rises within you, I offer these following queries, these questions. Is it time to breathe or time to push? How are you being called to let go and let God? How can we keep our hearts tender? So let's listen together, and please feel free to share anything that rises for you.